Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they release. We are on our Lionsgate Films miniseries from 1998 to 2005. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And welcoming a super special guest once again is Laron Chapman. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
All right, and today we are talking about Monsters Ball from 2001. This premiered at the AFI Fest, November 11th, 2001, opened LA and New York on December 26th, 2001, and expanded up to 714 theaters. It was nominated for 2 Oscars, one for original screenplay, and of course the win for Halle Berry in lead actress. She was also nominated for the Golden Globe. Budget, $4 million. Opening weekend made $110,000. Domestic gross of $31 million. Overall gross of $43 million. Top 5 films that weekend is Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, Ocean's 11, Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, Ali, and Bryden, say it with me, Vanilla Sky.
Vanilla Sky, my favorite.
The fucking...
You're gonna take Vanilla Sky over Fellowship of the Ring?
Yes!
I haven't seen Fellowship of the Ring, so yeah.
I will just say, I remember being 10 and my dad really wanting to see Fellowship of the Ring. And I was a little too, like, what if it's scary? You know, that type of thing. And I ended up going with Jimmy Neutron, and I did not like Jimmy Neutron. And then just walking past the Fellowship of the Ring posters, I was like, Will Arnett and Arrested Development being like, I made a terrible mistake. Like,
Jimmy Neutron has a Blair Witch joke. It's not all that bad.
Yeah. It really, I mean, I disliked it so much I've only seen it once. But, like, Fellowship of the Ring, I did go on to see, like, 2 or 3 times in theaters, and I can't even tell you how many times I've seen that fucking thing now. When I had my COVID booster, all I did was I brought all the, snacks that were possible to fit on my bed and just watched Lord of the Rings, like, over. Like, all 3 of them, the extended cuts, like, when I got my COVID booster. It was just like, yep, this is happening. This is all I'm doing today. So, yeah. No more Lord of the Rings love? Am I such a basic...
No.
My only Peter Jackson movies, as I've joked with our group before, I mean, it's true, but, like, it's also very funny. The only Peter Jackson movies I've seen are The Lovely Bones and The Hobbit trilogy.
Jesus Christ.
No. He's much better, I promise. He's much better than those.
Like, I remember going to a press screening when I wasn't even a member of the the Boston Online Film Critics Association yet, and I was a much bigger weed smoker back then and smoked a blunt with my friend Greg, and we saw The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, I think it was the first one. That was what it was called.
Did you see it in high frame rate?
It was 48 frames per second, and we got stoned out of our minds, and the movie started, and 45 seconds in, we looked at each other, and we were like, oh, nope. No.
What have we done?
Yeah, exactly. Or I was just like, I feel ill. Like, it was awful. And then I was just like, oh, God damn it. Like, and then I think I saw, like, wiped it out by seeing, like, Zero Dark 30, like, 2 or 3 times back then.
Yeah.
Like,
Jesus.
I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I like the Lord of the Rings movies. Yeah, I like them. I haven't seen the Hobbit movies, which I don't think that's a bad thing.
You don't need to. It's like the greatest hits of everything. Also, everything looked like you watch the Lord of the Rings movies now, and you're just like, my God, how the fuck were they able to pull this off with everything? Even the CGI looks good. The practical effects are good, and then, like, you watch The Hobbit and it looks like a Best Buy demo, or at least it did when I saw it. Yeah. It really is like you can see every single blemish on somebody's face. It looks like the you can tell the green screens are there and they're not actually, like, in New Zealand. It's fucking bullshit. I still haven't seen the other 2 because that movie was just like, oh, it farted all over my childhood memories of something I really loved. So,
how did they squeeze 9 hours of movie out of that tiny little book? Like, yeah. Because they're all essentially that one, like, 3 chapters, like, they made subtitles for them. Yeah. So, but it's all that book, right? I mean, it's like all this...
I don't remember what film critic, and I feel so bad, but I don't remember what film critic said this, but it was like, imagine making a 9-hour movie out of green eggs and ham, and then saying I would not eat it with a fox, and then just ending there.
That's good.
Holy shit. Oh, but before you said that, I was like, did Julianne Moore also be like, I saw Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius here
at the Coolidge Corner Theater? Yeah. I don't think we played that one. What was that, 2001? Maybe she saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon there. But Eraserhead, 1977. Maybe she saw House there. That I should have asked her about that. Yeah.
But U.S. is doing better than Canada this week. Number one song in the U.S. this week is How You Remind Me by Nickelback. Fuck yeah, Canada wins. Number one song in Canada this week is Only Time by Enya, not by Nickelback, unfortunately.
Good song.
Wait. Enya, wait. There was an Enya song that wasn't the Lord of the Rings song that was a bigger hit.
I guess.
Weekend release.
In Canada. And also, How You Remind Me never went to number one in Canada. What's up with that?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah. What did Hero from Spider-Man top Canada? We need to know this.
That was 2002, so
right. Maybe by that time they understood the genius of Trad Kroger. Anyways, Monsters Ball follows a racist prison guard who, after a family tragedy, re-examines his attitudes while falling in love with the wife of the last prisoner he executed. Directed by Marc Forster. Prior to this, everything put together in 2000. After this, Stay in 2005. Quantum of Solace in 2008. I think I was like 15, 16 when that came out. I watched half of it and I was like, I could be doing better things. So I've never
Quantum
finished
of Solace?
that. Yeah.
I saw it opening weekend and I went with a bunch of friends and we were like, why are we fucking confused during a James Bond movie?
Yeah.
Like, we were just like, why is this so inscrutable? I don't understand.
Yeah. It was pretty joyless because of how unnecessarily convoluted that it was. Like, even its title, it's like I always loved the theme songs, at least the modern ones, and so like that was the one with Alicia Keys and
Jack White.
Mm-hmm.
And and I was like, that combination should have shredded, and I was like, what the hell is this song about? It's the same thing about the movie. They don't fucking know. So it's like
that's a movie where you put a gun to my head, you'd be like, you've seen this, right? And be like, yes. Can you tell me anything that happens in it? And no.
I think James Bond is in it. Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
It's weird. I liked that when I was like 10 or whatever, but I basically only remembered like the Gemma Arterton like being forced to drink oil. That I remember that, and then the bit where like the explosion happens and like there's like slow-mo glass exploding. I was like, that's pretty cool. But then I forgot I only found out about it on Twitter because like someone shared it, but I forgot that James Bond yells at someone, "You and I share a mutual friend," before shooting someone in the head.
Wait, what?
Yeah, and I was just like, I did not remember this. That is a bananas piece of dialogue. But
I do not remember that at all.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Marc Forster has other classics, folks. World War Z in 2013, which I caught up with. You know,
as research,
yeah, movie sucks. And Man Called Otto from this year.
Did you mention the Kite Runner adaptation?
No, but yes, he did that. And
I
also Finding Neverland.
I was like, Finding Neverland.
Finding Neverland
class, yeah.
Yep, I saw Finding Neverland more than once. Kite Runner, I remember I wanted to go see Atonement with a friend, and we got ID'd, and we were like, oh, okay, I guess we can't go see that. Let's go see the Kite Runner, which features sexual assault against a child. And then I remember us being like, what the fuck? Like, so this movie that features assault against a child is PG-13, but we can't watch consensual sex between James McAvoy and Keira Knightley. I don't understand. But like, I was just like,
you're too young to watch the opening long shot of Atonement, sir. You have to go
where they're fully clothed also.
Right.
Like, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, I remember seeing the Kite Runner and being like, how the fuck? Why? I mean, it happens in the book, but how did the fuck did this get PG-13? Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Where are we at? Okay, we're done with Forster, thank God. Written by Milo Attica. After this, he co-wrote Birth in 2004.
He did?
Yeah, I think he's one of 3 co-writers.
I love Birth.
Yeah, the Nicole Kidman one, right?
Yeah.
Featuring what is arguably one of her best performances, I would say definitely.
It's high up
there. The best. Yeah.
And Will Rokas. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, it's weird concept. That's the weird. That movie has such a fascinating, compelling, weird concept.
Oh,
I don't know if... No, go ahead.
No, I interrupted you. Please.
No, I think the I don't know if the ending comes together really nice, but really cleanly for me. But I think it's compelling to watch. Just this weird, and they just go with it, and it gets uncomfortable, but it's also just it's very fascinating. Her and that kid, have a really interesting, and compelling kind of chemistry together. So
yeah, deeply disturbing, very moving film. Yeah.
I will also say that what was that the writer who wrote also co-wrote Birth, and what's his name?
Milo Attica.
Yeah, he also wrote, because as I've talked in our friend group, I watched all of Paul Dano's movies last year. He also wrote the movie The King by James Marsh with Gael Garcia Bernal, where he confronts his father, his estranged father, played by William Hurt, who's a preacher. So and ingratiates himself with that family. So this guy, that screenwriter seems to have like a real thing. It's like, what if these strangers met and then had a weird relationship or whatever? It's like that seems to be his niche as a screenwriter. Anyways, I just thought it was funny.
I only saw the movie. I only saw The King, where Robert Pattinson shames Timothy Chalamet for his dick size, which is the only memorable thing about that movie is giant balls with a tiny cock. That's all I remember about that thing.
Was that the same year The Devil All the Time or whatever?
No,
no.
That was that came out in the pandemic.
Yeah, that was the worst movie I saw that year.
Those were both movies that like only existed to be like on Twitter. People being like, "Yo, what? Y'all see Robert Pattinson in this movie?"
Yeah, where he like trolled the movie, and it was the only good thing about both of those movies. It's just like, this is really boring. What if I just like created chaos and then yeah.
I also saw that Milo Attica was uncredited, but also co-wrote Under the Skin. So,
Ooh. What?
Yeah.
No, that's not insignificant. So,
yeah.
Skin is one of the best movies of the past 10 years, I'd argue.
Well, it's the same director as Birth, so I'm sure he was just like, "Hey, do a write on this." Yeah.
Do any of you remember when there were like tabloid photos of Scarlett Johansson like taking a tumble in like Scotland or whatever, and they were like, "Uh-oh, Scarlett Johansson has an oopsie," but when you realize what that movie was, and like there were all these hidden cameras, Scarlett Johansson was like, "Ugh, haha, everybody, yeah, okay, fine, I fell, but like it's not like."
Yeah.
Oh, I know what picture you're talking about. Yeah, that's a legendary picture.
Because then it happens in the movie, and I remember watching it in the theater, being like, "Oh, that was like totally planned," but but the movie was so under wraps that everyone was like, "Uh-oh, Scarlett Johansson like hit her face."
Yeah, because no one had seen it, so it's like,
yeah, exactly.
Also co-written by Will Rokas. After this, he wrote Shadowboxer, which is directed by Lee Daniels, who's the producer of this.
Oh boy!
But yeah,
that's a movie.
Really?
I haven't seen a few things by Lee Daniels, none of which I like, but Shadowboxer sounds bananas.
it is. It absolutely is. I know you're getting ready to explain it, but like Cuba Gooding Jr. and Helen Mirren have a passionate, intimate, explicit sex scene together in the woods in that movie, and it is they don't cut away, so you're like, this is a very graphic film, and it's interest. But that pairing, and they're like hit men, hit people, whatever, Joseph Gordon-Levitt is in that movie, and he is dating Monique. Yes, Monique, the Oscar winner, Monique.
How long is Shadowboxer? I think we have to stop the pod to watch this.
It's not a good movie, but it is so unhinged and just bananas that it is watchable. It's watchably bad, but it's just, yeah, he's not a subtle director, so I'll just put it that way.
No. God, yeah. Sounds like some garbage I need to watch. Anyways, where were we? Starring Billy Bob Thornton.
You mentioned Shadowboxer and then time stopped for a second. So
that is true. Yeah. That sounds made up. That's how wild it sounds. Billy Bob Thornton as Hank Rotowski. Prior to this, wrote and acted in One False Move in 1992. Won an Oscar for adapted screenplay for Swing Blade in 1996. Simple Plan in 1998, which he's phenomenal in. After this, Bad Santa in 2003. The Ice Harvest in 2005. This would probably derail us for 10 minutes, but Mr. Woodcock in 2007, and we all know where we were when we first watched Bad Santa 2 in 2016, and once again, I just have to drop in a clip from the Q interview.
What I'm explaining is we said to not talk about shit like that, and we also said that we didn't want to hear anything about how this is my first love. You wouldn't say that to Tom Petty, would you? I understand music is your first love. Well, my first love was a chick named Lisa Cohn. You know what I mean?
All right. So I think the only reason we would do that is as a point of entry. So for people to, do you want to continue this if we talk about music?
That'd be great.
Okay. Well, if we can call a truce, then I can ask you questions about music, because I was asking you and you didn't seem to want to answer, but I'm cool to talk about that. So can you talk about your musical influences? Because there is an interesting fusion in this on this record.
Yeah, it's a mixture of the British invasion with hillbilly music, something that I know more about than, say, a band who's 20 years old, that you wouldn't say that to. Yeah. I grew up as pretty much a music historian, so, yeah.
And yeah.
I was at home pretending it wasn't happening. That's where I was.
Did Bad Santa 2 even go to theaters? Or was
Yes.
that like a... It did?
Christina Hendricks was in it.
Who'd put that out? Because that was a Dimension movie, the first one.
Let's see.
That seems like a Crackle movie, like Joe Dirt 2 was.
The first one was New Line, if I'm remembering correctly.
It says it's a company called Broad Green Pictures.
Ah, yeah. That sounds like a mini major, folks.
Ooh.
Wait, Broad Green? Didn't they produce like a lot of good stuff?
Yeah, their first movie looks like it's Eden, the Mia Hansen love movie.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
Yeah,
I need to watch that. Yeah.
And then their last movie is it looks like they're a production company as well, not just distributors. So that's like kind of the thing that complicates it, I guess.
So
but yeah, Bad Santa 2. Don't check it out. Halle Berry as Letitia Musgrove. Prior to this, Jungle Fever, Strictly Business, and Last Boy Scout in 1991. Bulworth in 1998. Any of y'all seen that? Because I've heard that's a fucking nuts movie.
I haven't, but I can't help but notice that you skipped right over the Flintstones, which is when I noticed her as a child.
Well, yeah. Or doesn't she, like, isn't her name, because it was supposed to be Sharon Stone, and her name is, like, Sharon Stone, but it's a Flintstones joke.
I just remember that Kyle MacLachlan's the bad guy, and she hits him over the head with a rock and saves the day at the end of the movie, I think.
Yep, she's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. In X-Men in 2000.
Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else.
And there was her clip talking to... Yep, there's her clip. This same year she's in Swordfish, which unfortunately I'm very sorry I wasn't able to finally watch this movie. I need to watch this garbage.
Me neither.
Oh my gosh.
I've seen the opening of Swordfish though.
Back when I thought I was straight, my dad and me both went to see Swordfish because of the alleged, like, it's the first movie Halle Berry is gonna go topless in, and then the moment that everything came off and everyone in the theater gasped, I was like, it does nothing for me. She's beautiful, but it does nothing for me. But thank you. I'm glad you all had this moment.
Movie, can you please go back to John Travolta's facial hair? That's doing more for me
right.
now.
Is that your equivalent of, like, your dad taking you to Hooters? It's like, we don't need to go that far. We can go see Swordfish or something.
Yes. I was like, is this supposed to be doing something? Because it didn't do anything for me.
I have seen the opening of that thing, which is utterly insane. It's one of the cruelest, most bananas. Like, of course, this could only have been made in the 2000s types of sequences I've seen. Yeah.
Charlie, let's make a pact. After we're done recording this, we have to watch Swordfish.
Yeah,
it's good trash. It's good trash.
We've been putting it off for 30 plus years. We have no more excuses.
You can't see this right now, but I'm, like, cutting my thumb open with a pocket knife and sticking it up against the camera with Kevin right now. We've made.
You're like, what was that for? Pack. Oh, it was for the cyber terrorism movie, Swordfish. Yeah.
And we're all going to the World's Fair, also.
Yes. But after this, Die Another Day in 2002, Gothica in 2003. That's Charlie's favorite movie of 2003. The Limp Bizkit music video for their cover Behind Blue Eyes. Hell yeah. Catwoman in 2004.
It's a good cover. It's a good cover, though.
Thank you. Catwoman in 2004. Let us all remember her Razzie acceptance speech.
First of all, I want to thank Warner Brothers. Thank you for putting me in a piece of shit, god-awful movie.
Which mirrored her Oscar acceptance speech.
Yeah, she's like crying and she's like, I want to thank my publicist for putting me in such a piece of shit movie. Cloud Atlas 2012 and John Wick, Chapter 2 Parabellum 2019.
It was Chapter 3!
What did I say?
You said Chapter 2.
Oh, my bad. I'm so sorry.
Chapter 2 has Ruby Rose, and that's when Lawrence Fishburne enters the picture.
Yeah. She kicks ass in Parabellum.
Oh, she does. Yeah, she's awesome.
Oh, man. And finally, Heath Ledger as Sonny Grotowski. Prior to this, 10 Things I Hate About You in Two Hands in 1999. Two Hands is wild. After this, The Order in 2003. I'm going to watch that garbage. I know we mentioned that with Shannon Saucerman. She's in that. I gotta quit fucking around and watch it. Brokeback Mountain in 2005, Candy in 2006, and of course The Dark Knight in 2008. Also starring Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka Diddy Dirty Money, and Peter Boyle and Mos Def. Trivia. As part of the research of this film, Marc Forster actually sat in an electric chair and was horrified to see the nail marks that the electrocuted prisoners had involuntarily scratched into the wood.
Oh my God.
Wes Bentley initially signed on for the role that went to Heath Ledger, but pulled out at the last minute, and Lionsgate told them to get a replacement in 48 hours, so they got Heath Ledger. And I'm pretty sure Wes Bentley came out and was like, yeah, that was my drug period.
Yeah, he went through a lot.
You're telling me he could have been in Soul Survivors and Monsters Ball the same year? That shows different sides of the same actor. Producer Lee Daniels later admitted that such was his drug addiction at the time the film was released that when Halle Berry won an Oscar for the film, he was passed out on his hotel room floor and missed it.
Whoa, that's upsetting.
Yeah. This film initially got an NC-17 for the infamous sex scene. The unrated version is available on the Lionsgate Signature Series DVD, which I have, but I was too lazy to put the DVD in and just watched it on Plex. At one point, the film was going to be directed by Sean Penn with Robert De Niro starring, and also Oliver Stone was going to direct with Tommy Lee Jones.
Jesus fucking Christ. Thank God we were spared of that shit.
Would have been bananas.
Yeah,
How many movies are we going to cover where it's like, yeah, Oliver Stone almost directed this, because this, and American Psycho, I think there was another one.
I'm not a Marc Forster fan, but oh my God, it would have been unhinged if either of them directed it, and it could have been...
Imagine Monsters Ball by way of Natural Born Killers.
I mean, we've been talking about 2 Robert Richardson shot movies.
Yeah. Natural Born Killers. Check it out. My highest recommendation: do not come back to me once you finish it.
I got the Oliver Stone 4-pack on discount at the video store, and it had Natural Born Killers, Alexander, one of the director's cuts of that, and then Heaven and Earth and Any Given Sunday. I was like, this sounds like a good deal for like $6.
I'm not
Natural Born Killers. Oh man.
Oliver Stone and I aren't friends at this point in time. I remember
you weren't a big W fan?
No, I avoided that even as a teenager. When I had a friend who worked at a Regal Cinema, we were just like, we don't need to see that. And I know that he's probably made a lot of good stuff that I haven't seen. I haven't seen JFK. I haven't seen
JFK ribs.
Yeah, I'm sure. I do remember loving Natural Born Killers though, which I don't remember why this is my most cemented memory of the movie my dad hated most, but he was like, that movie's disgusting. And then I
it is.
And then I got it from Netflix, and I was just like, they were like, well, what do you do? Oh, I watched this. What do you think? I loved it. And then my dad was like, of course you did.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a movie. I talked about it in my mixed reviews episode.
Hell yeah.
That, man.
Great episode. Go listen to it, everybody.
Yeah. Just listen to the version without me on it. But yeah, that movie is just fucking bananas. Like it's it's going to be one of those where eventually down the road it's like 2.5 stars now, and then eventually it's just going to be 5 stars and be like, fuck y'all, so I don't care.
I've been coming here for damn near 11 years, and I'm tired. Only reason I'm here, so you can say goodbye to your son.
Lionsgate Home Entertainment proudly presents Academy Award winner Billy Bob Thornton.
Do you know what you did? You should have done it. So
Heath Ledger.
You hate me. Yeah, I hate you. I always did.
Academy Award winner Halle Berry.
Hank!
Who are you?
My name is Letitia Musgrove. Me and Hank is, friends.
Sean Combs.
I've always believed that a portrait captures a person far better than a photograph. It truly takes a human being to really see a human being.
And Peter Boyle.
It's a time when they knew their place. Where you going?
I met your daddy.
In one of the most acclaimed films of the year, Monsters Ball.
I think we're gonna be all right.
Okay, initial thoughts. Bryden, go first.
Yeah, okay. I'd never seen this before. This is my first time viewing it. I know that this was like loved by Roger Ebert at the time. Halle Berry won an Oscar for it.
Number one film of 2001 for
number one.
Roger
Okay.
Ebert. It was number one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd heard that like it sounds like the buzz on this has sort of soured a little bit in the last few years. I know there are some people who still like it, but then there are some who are wondering if maybe it's as good as its reputation was. So I plugged it in a few nights ago. It was streaming on CTV Watch, which I think is the Canadian equivalent of Crackle in the US.
Or Freebie.
Yeah. I actually really like the first 30 minutes of this when it is just like going through like the minutia of like the prison execution process and everything with like the Monsters Ball, where it's like, them going through the process of like, okay, what does this guy want? Like before, he had like, having his last meal and he wants like drawings. All right, great. Who's going to give him the equipment that he needs for all of that? And I think it is keenly aware of like some of the uncomfortable like biases that like exist in like these institutions where it is, Billy Bob Thornton asks like, he's like laying out everyone giving like the pep talk of how it's going to go down. And he asks like one of the white female guards, like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine. Then you see there's a black male guard who just like has his arms crossed looking very, very, kind of upset about it. I think the movie is like very aware of like how Thornton, especially because you've seen the character be racist towards his neighbors in the movie, that like he has like these sort of blinders on. So, and the way that the movie doesn't like explain like some of the details too, like when you see like Sean Combs, his character being put into a diaper and everything for the execution, having watched Mr. Death before this, where they talk about the losing control of your faculties, like when that happens, like I think that's like the disturbing suggestion of like what that's for is, I think it's well played how Forster underplays that little detail, but then I don't know, I feel like this movie does rush a lot of its arcs, like Heath Ledger, like him like vomiting during the walk up to the electric chair and then killing himself in the next scene. It's like really jarring how quickly that happens, and I feel like that's like Charlie and Kevin, we were texting about this movie last night about how like Charlie, what was the word I think you said like the word of the movie is contrived.
Contrived.
Yeah, which it is like where it's Billy Bob it's like Halle Berry. Her husband is at the same prison where Billy Bob Thornton works. He oversees that execution. And then she gets a new job at the diner where he goes. And then he's passing by the diner when her son is hit by a car. It's just like, it's so many like overlapping things where you're just like, okay, this is very, overly contrived. There's no better way to describe it. And I also think my problem with the movie too is that like, one, I think Forster, like, it's like, I'm not in love, like, with how he, like, cuts some of his scenes. Like, there will be, like, these sort of, like, weird cuts in the middle of, like, sentences or, like, in between sentence breaks where he will just, like, cut closer to an actor and it's not really, like, motivated, in my opinion. But I also think the big problem is how it's a matter of perspective. I mean, with Mr. Death, like, I think the fact that the movie isn't about, like, prisoners that, like, who are on death row or, like, other people in the movie, and it's about this guy who is overseeing it, I think the movie is very aware of the void at that center. Whereas I feel like this, I mean, yeah, it's a bit telling that, like, the synopsis is, like, it's about Thornton experiencing a family tragedy and not Halle Berry, and like they prioritize that. And I feel like Halle Berry, if the movie was about them equally, Halle Berry and Billy Bob Thornton experiencing their own tragedies and coming together, I could maybe buy that. But I feel like the movie opens on Thornton and spends so much time with him. It is about him for the most part, I think. And I also think it's a bit problematic, and I think we could talk about this, but I think it's also questionable that the idea that like his character is an emotional abuser and an emotionally repressed man, but and a physical abuser. He like beats his son all the time, and it's also that he's like a stone cold racist. And I think if the movie was about him being shaken by his son's suicide and learning to overcome his emotional repression and, you know, abusiveness and how that's like handed down from his father, that would be one thing. But the fact that the movie sort of ties that in with him unlearning racism that his like, I mean, coming from where he lives and like the people that he grew up with, I feel like the movie's like the way it equates the two of like, well, like that's how he overcomes both because of this tragedy. It's like him overcoming the emotional repression doesn't like negate like his prejudice and everything. And I feel like the way the movie kind of like softens that, or at least kind of like ties in those two things, doesn't quite sit well with me. It feels a little too easy. And I will say Thornton like gives it his all as an actor, you know, and you know, we've talked about Thornton. He sounds like he's a real asshole in real life and everything, but like I think the way he underplays a lot of it, it does maybe make it a little more believable than it should actually be on paper. And then Barry, I'm not in love with the performance. I feel like her character is a little. It is a broadly written character, and again, it's also I feel like the movie doesn't do her entirely justice by like, you know, sidelining her for the most part in the narrative. But I think she does a pretty good job. She has a few moments that are good, but I feel like the broad writing of the character and the direction maybe are not quite the best suited for her. And also it doesn't make I mean, Kevin, Charlie, and I were talking about like it's the way that they rush the romance between her and Thornton is just like not believable in my opinion. But yeah, no, I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time, but please I'll pass the torch on to someone else to get their thoughts on this movie because I think it'll be interesting to hear.
Laron, initial thoughts.
Yes, I've had an up and down relationship with this movie. I mentioned, I think off camera that I watched it probably about 7 times. I think I have a different relationship with it because obviously one of the Oscar acceptance speeches that I go to as a pick-me-up is Halle Berry's. Just because the glass ceiling that was broken in that moment was so the significance of it. I don't even think she was she was aware of it. That's why she was overcome. But I don't think we in that moment were really like understanding that what just happened with the win. You know, like oh, she won, and it was like the surprise was that she won over someone else. She was the dark horse that year. She was not the projected winner. And so when she got up there and she's overcome with emotion and we're all just kind of like reeling in at like, you know, like what's happening? Like, I mean, most people cry when they win, but you can see that it's something deeper
she is bereft.
She's like, she can't breathe. She can't breathe. She's like, and when she starts she reminds everybody, she starts listing all of the nameless women of color whose shoulders I'm standing on right now, you know, and it's me right now. I just became the first Black woman to ever win best actress, and I always tell people, you know, say what you will of the film, the movie, of even her performance. Really, it's so like it's cool that she took that moment, and made it about that. And not about, you know, like, because it was such a big deal. And unfortunately, we're talking about it that movie came out 20 years ago. And she is still the only Black woman to have ever won the Oscar for best picture.
Yeah.
So in 95 years of Oscar, you're telling me there's one woman of color deserving of the win for that speaks volumes of where we are as a country, where we are because there's so many Angela Bassett's been around some rotation so many times. Like there's so many people that could have been, you know. But anyway, to speak to the film, I think that for me, I have a lot of issues with the end. It's no matter how many times I've watched it, and I understand what they're going for. They're not trying to give us an easy, spelled out, like she has an emotional confrontation with them on the porch after she learns the stuff, and I'm like, there is something very powerful about her not saying anything, but it's also, I feel like a symptom of a larger issue that the film has, in that she does not. That again, when she mentioned her being sidelined, I don't know what it says about black women. You know what I mean? Like, if here it is, she's beholden to this person for all kinds of reasons, financial reasons. She's lost everything, and this person, that white savior complex comes into full effect in that moment. Yeah. And for her to say nothing almost feels like she's trapped. Like it's
yes, that's how I read it.
That's exactly what I sent to everybody too. Yeah.
Like, what am I gonna do? I don't have a house. I don't have a son. I don't have a husband. So even if I feel a certain way with this, what am I gonna do?
I gotta just accept it, and that's so bleak. And maybe it's truthful, but it's also very bleak. And so, I don't know. I had issues with Bill. I think both of their performances are good. I think that Billy Bob Thornton, I do agree some of the arcs are a little not quite smooth, because I think that I get what they're saying. I don't think their relationship was ever, was ever one out of desire or love. I think it was out of need. Like, they both seemed like both two broken people. They both lost their children. They both were grieving. They both had a lot of regrets. They both had a lot of, they were both very lonely, so I never saw their relationship as one of romantic, it was more just because that's even the line when the first intimate scene with the two of them, the line that she keeps repeating says, I just want to feel good, and it's just, she just wants to escape the crippling weight of all those feelings because she's suffocated by them. So I understood that. So I accepted the relationship without ever being warm to it as kind of being like, oh, it's I'm rooting for them. It's more so like they're just two lonely souls that have kind of fallen into the same path, albeit pretty contrived, as you mentioned, very, very big, coincidences there. But if you notice, there's a parallel too, because she's not very as racist as his character is. But you can see they're both dealing with a lot of generational trauma because it's coming down from his father into him, and he's treating his son like that. He's treating Heath Ledger's character that way, and Heath Ledger's character seems like a glimmer of hope, because he doesn't treat the prison guards cruelly. He doesn't, he does have this sensitivity towards most deaf and the kids that kind of come around his area.
We're gonna have to talk about why he's friends with like 2 8-year-olds, but yes. There's a story there too. But you can see that there's a sensitivity to him that's not in Hank's character or his father's character. And so that shows like there's a breakage there in this thing. And, it's almost like he resents his son for being better than he is, And so, but on the flip side of that, you got, Halle Berry and her son. She treats him horribly, the same way that Hank treats her son. So, and I understand why. I get it, because they're living in harsh conditions, and she understands that her son is very vulnerable to all kinds of crimes, all kinds of things, and so him being overweight is just one more thing that's gonna make his life harder, and she's trying in her own way to protect him from or shield him from more of all of that, but it comes off as really cruel, in the moment. And so it's almost like the death of their kids is it took something very radical to kind of grip both of them and make them, kind of reevaluate their life's choices. And so they're just drifting through life through grief and regret, and they find somebody that matches that in some way, that they identify that in, and then that's the relationship. So that's kind of how I've always viewed it. I think there's problems for sure throughout the writing. I would have definitely smoothed out some of the arcs a lot better, but I do think there's power and beauty in it too. So the ending doesn't sit well with me,
But overall, I'm mostly positive on this.
Yeah. I like you mentioning the radical event that sort of like brings them all together, and I guess like me thinking it's contrived, and I'll make this very brief, but it's interesting that the movie ends with a shot of like a starry sky, like it's all like like sort of a like maybe there's some like higher power, like
hopeful,
maybe, and maybe if like the movie went like leaned in that direction where it was like sort of like heightened or like these suggestion that there is like some sort of higher power that's like bringing these people together. I mean, maybe I would run with it a little bit more with like in that way, which is interesting. Yeah, I wonder if that was pointed in Forster's direction, but
just real quick, Monsters Ball was Roger Ebert's number 1 of that year. Richard Ropert's number 2 of that year was Vanilla Sky. So
okay, I'll give it to Roper.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mulholland Drive wasn't either of their number 1, so we all lose.
That's
Ebert, Mulholland Drive was number 5 for Roper. Mulholland Drive was number 3.
What? I have to go with.
Roper, come on the side of Roper.
Oh, God damn it.
Richard Roper, who had Shallow Hal as number 10. I'm not kidding.
I've still never seen Shallow Hal, but
I own the DVD, buddy.
Like, I won't shit on Shallow Hal, but to put it as your top 10 paired with movies like Mulholland Drive, I mean, that's...
I would put Shallow Hal in my top 10 if I'd only seen 10 movies in 2001. and it would be the last one also. Let's see, where am I at? I'll go with initial thoughts real quick. I feel like I was going to respond to somebody else's initial thoughts, but I'll just get through it. I'd always heard of this movie, obviously, for the Halle Berry Oscar win, but it never really interested me. When it came out, I was 10, and what did I care about adult problems? But throughout the years, I've still never really I was expecting something, very, very Oscar baity, so I've always just been like, I'm fine on that. Like the one shining light would be like, I get to see Diddy in another performance, which we covered his other his only other performance where he's not playing a version of himself and Made. He's actually pretty good. I thought at worst it would be like a Blindside situation where the movie's garbage, but I'm like, yeah, well, Bullock is good in it though, so. And yeah, I really didn't get much out of this. It really doesn't have a lot to offer besides like extreme melodrama and love interest, that their entire arc is just terrible shit happening to them, and the main character is just like this blank slate. Like, I can see all of the grief and all of the sadness going on with Halle Berry, and then Billy Bob Thornton is just not even like in a gruff, silent type of way, seems to be dealing with that. And it just reads so obvious for her, and then so not obvious for him, or just even subtly. And when I was listening to the commentary, which is Marc Forster and both of the screenwriters, first of all, Marc Forster sounds like Hans and Franz from SNL. It was really distracting. But the writers are, I swear to God, it's almost like they hired 2 guys to pretend to be the writers for this movie and talk about it. I'll put in the audio clip that I sent you all.
And I just was wondering, like, you were talking about, I mean, this is a very personal script for both of you. Is this any way, I mean, you want to go back? Just, I was wondering, deep down, what you both was the most important thing you wanted to say with this movie, was the script?
That people can do, that you can change yourself, that you can become somebody better, I guess, that you can break the arms of your father. That, for me, that's a big issue here, is the father holding on and controlling his son, and that you can break that. To me, that's something that I was really into.
That sounds like something the Billy Bob Thornton character would say. He was like, I don't know, reminded me of something, I guess.
Like, he replied to that question like he was Billy Bob on that Cube interview. But it was just, through the 2 hours I listened to that, I was like, I don't understand this movie anymore, and y'all guys had 2 hours to talk about it. And the writers just seem very, it said they worked on it for like 6 or 7 years, so it's obviously like a huge thing for them, and they've never really gone on to do much of anything afterwards, even though they were nominated for the screenplay. But yeah, and also in the commentary, they're talking about stuff that is not on screen, where they're just like, yeah, well, Billy Bob's acting this way because you can tell that, like, his father is a certain way, so he never really escaped that, but when he starts to do this, you can see that he's starting to escape. I was like, that's not in the movie, dog. Like, and they also said when they were writing it, they wrote it just as a story and brought somebody in to make it into a screenplay, but they really didn't put much dialogue or like direction in it, so they were just like, oh, who are we to know more than the actors and whatnot. And I feel like that translates into somebody like Billy Bob just taking it very at face value, while Halle Berry is understanding the underneathness that's going on with all of that. But anyways, that commentary was insufferable. Anyways, I'm pretty allergic to movies like this. Heath Ledger's performance is probably the first person I was drawn to, because Ledger's never let me down, and then he's out in like the first like 25 minutes. But same with Diddy as well, who I was into. Then we have just have like Billy Bob Thornton like puttering and mumbling for the rest of the runtime, and the story just constantly is just mistreating Barry's character as like plot or character development, and that just really got like, after like, I don't know, like the 9th person died around her, I was just like, can we stop doing this to her? Like, she's not a character, she's just a vessel for all the bad things to happen to. Like, son dies, husband dies, gets her house taken away, gets racial slurs thrown at her, almost loses her job. Meanwhile, this gruff man comes along whose son dies, but either he truly doesn't love him, like he tells him before he kills himself, or is just doing like a perfect job internalizing it. But like puts his father in a home just like willy-nilly. It's not even a big deal for him because of how he treats Barry, and quits his job willingly and is perfectly fine. He even buys a gas station because he's like bored that day or something like that. And yeah, him renaming the gas station after Halle Berry's character when they're not talking, I was telling y'all, that gives me like Robin Thicke vibes. Like
blurred lines.
No. The album he called Paula, when he was like trying to get Paula Patton back.
His wife back. Yeah.
And I think that album, like, what was it? The big thing around that time was like it sold 300 copies in all of Australia. It's like nobody wanted it. And then at the end, when there's like very fucking like obvious lines where it's just like they're in bed, and first of all, that scene is like, the way it makes it feel is just like Billy Bob Thornton is like helping, showing her what oral sex is, and that was just weird. And then when he's like, I'm here to save you, and she's like, well, I need to be saved, and I was like, get fucked. Also, we will talk about the sex scene when we get into the plot description, but it's really embarrassing to me. Billy Bob is now just not racist because he's had sex with a black woman, and one of the co-writers of the movie was so impressed by it on the commentary. He like keeps commenting on how turned on the scene makes him feel, and yeah, that was rough.
Yikes.
Also, yeah,
it's missing the point of that whole scene.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's what they're talking about. It's just like these people, they just want to feel something so bad, they just go animalistic on each other. And Mark, you just did such a good job with that. And yeah. Anyways, to wrap it all up, I love that Barry won the Oscar for this. It's unfortunately is a historical win but this performance is like borderline embarrassing, but not the performance itself, more so just the character. She's like doing capital A acting throughout that feels so over the top and again melodramatic. She embodies the character for sure way more than Billy Bob. I know what she's been through and how she feels, because unfortunately the movie will not stop showing bad things happening to her and her reacting. But I have no fucking clue what Billy Bob is thinking or feeling throughout this entire movie. There's not a lot there, and I feel like while y'all were talking, I was like, what if this was Heath Ledger instead of Billy Bob, and then there's a younger character than Heath Ledger in it, and there's no Billy Bob? I was like, that might be more interesting, because I feel like Heath Ledger would bring a lot more. He's very good at being very subtly withdrawn.
Brokeback Mountain example.
Brokeback Mountain, of course.
Doesn't he have like 5 lines in that movie, and one of them's the tagline, and he talks out the side of his mouth the whole movie, but like that character feels so real, fully realized. So yeah, I think he would have been a lot. It would have been a lot more interesting, for sure.
No, it was I mean, yeah, the other unfortunate thing about Halle Berry's career is like just that like it didn't with like the Oscar win, I feel like it can lead to like bigger and better projects, and I feel like that has not really happened with Halle Berry. I feel yeah,
she had better performances before her Oscar win, which is upsetting.
And people are really tough on her when they talk about like the bad movies that she's in. And like, look, a lot of these movies I have not seen. Like, I have not seen Catwoman. I haven't seen like Perfect Stranger or whatever. And I've heard those movies are bad, and maybe she's bad in them, but like they also sound like they are just like they're bad. It sounds like they're bad movies. And like Gothica. Movies. I mean, like, I don't like Gothica, and I'm not, like, especially wild about her performance in that, but, like, it's like, what actor would be good in that movie? Like, I don't know. I don't know if anyone would be. It's like, so I feel like it's really unfair. And I don't know.
Oh, it's totally unfair, because there's plenty of people that could have terrible movies, and then they have one good one, and then all the bad ones are set aside, but nobody's propping up her good ones. Like, I think people like Things We Lost in the Fire, and that's
okay.
Yeah, like, that's not like a total disaster. It's just fucking Catwoman. It's just like nobody's talking about Ben Affleck, and it's just like, oh, you mean the guy that's in Daredevil? It's just like that's more embarrassing. kind of.
I mean, there were jokes like on role models, like the kid like says to Paul Rudd's like suck at reindeer games and everything. So like that, I guess that there are jokes about Ben Affleck for a while, but like yeah, it is often like people are quick to welcome him back. I guess yeah, no, it's. I mean, but yeah, like you said, John Wick Chapter 3, like that is nice. That like that was a good showcase for her. She's not in the movie that much, unfortunately. But maybe she's gonna be in like the next one a lot, which that will be cool.
She didn't need to be in it. She was just a magical heat check, and then leaves the movie, and you're just like, God damn, wasn't that great?
Yeah.
Well, and but to speak to like what you're saying about it being unfortunate that this is the one she won for. I feel that way about. I mean, because think about it. Like one thing I'll say about Lee Daniels, Lee Daniels got her an Oscar, and so he got Monique an Oscar. So I mean, he helps them out in that regard. But it's still unfortunate, and I say it all the time. I've talked about it all the time about the type of roles that get awarded with black actors. I mean, it's very clear. I mean, here she's on a downtrodden mom at the mercy of a racist white guy that killed her husband on death row. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a, on paper, it's not a compelling, like, it's not a role that you're like excited to be like, I think she's great in the role, but I think yeah, like the character on page is not celebratory, right? And then same thing with Monique. She's playing the worst mother on the planet. She's fantastic in it. But again, she's playing a terrible person, And Denzel Washington, same year, he won the same Oscar the same year as Halle Berry that year for Training Day. The movie's great. I like him in the movie, but he's given 48 better performances than Training Day, in my opinion. And so, but you give it to him and playing a racist cop. So it just speaks to the Oscars having very problematic, like if ever you're gonna, the 10 times they've awarded movies to black actors is typically for, degrading roles.
Peter Nyong'o and Us didn't even get a fucking nomination.
That's more horror, I would say.
I know it's more horror, but like that's.
But she was fantastic. She was great in that.
That was one movie where I went back and I watched it twice, and I had issues with it the first time. I like that movie a lot for the record, but I was like, I don't know if this all pieces together, but. Then going back and seeing that her performance like is even more nuanced with the twist. In hindsight, it's like, oh my fucking God, you had to do that. You had to play it both ways, which like I can't even think about. I'm not trying to spoil Us, but but again, she won for 12 Years a Slave. Very deserved win, but again, a film that explicitly deals with racism and it has to be so. I mean, it sucks. I mean, even thinking about remember when Viola Davis was like the front runner for The Help, which I haven't even seen, and then Meryl Streep won her fucking Oscar for playing Margaret Thatcher for another movie I haven't seen. Margaret Thatcher.
But even Meryl, even Meryl said when she was on stage, it's like, why did you give this to me? She's like,
but whatever,
whatever. I guess should have been Viola's. I've been campaigning for her during the campaign. It's like, but it just seems it's interesting, like the ones that get awarded. It just throughout history with all of them, and there's something to be said about that too, because. As varied as the roles could be, for other people, it just seems like the black character is always relegated to the crackhead mom or the drug dealer or the
Yeah.
poor mom, right? You know, so it just seems like, yeah, I mean, there should be better, more diversified roles for women of color too. You know, so.
Yes.
Well, and now there's no excuse. Like
Right.
20 years
Yeah.
ago,
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Now it's just like, oh, it wasn't nominated. It's just like, well, maybe they need to, maybe there's just not good enough performances. It's like in 2022, you're saying that because people can make shit on their iPhone and that could get nominated. But sure.
Did any of you see God's Country? Because I think Thandaway Newton is unfucking believable in that thing.
It made my top 25 this year. I think she was not many people saw that, and it was funny.
No,
the person behind me, there was like 3 people in the theater when I went to see it, and I was totally like there for it. And when I remember, as soon as the credits rolled, the guy behind me was like, well, that was the worst movie I've ever seen. I do not agree with it. Yeah, I don't agree
Christ.
and I could tell, like, it's not, look, it's a slow burn neo-noir Western, so like, that's either your thing or it's not. You know what I mean? Like, it's very deliberately paced, but I found it really engrossing. I thought she was fantastic in it. And
she's incredible in it, yeah.
I mean, to a Western with, a black woman in the middle of the wintry woods by herself, vulnerable, but she also is not afraid to pull out her shotgun for the racist bigots that try to encroach upon. That's an awesome plot to me.
Also, a former cop too. Yeah,
a former cop. Yeah, I dug it.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, I need to see that. Ooh, sounds great.
It's really, really good. I watched it twice this year.
Charlie, initial thoughts.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to take a bathroom break. I have a complicated relationship with this movie in that I remember this, like Kevin, this movie came out when I was 10. I was not allowed to see it yet for understandable reasons. I remember I watched the Oscars up to a point, and then it was like parents were like, okay, you have to go to bed. But they taped it for me. And then coincidentally, it wasn't even one of those, I'm sick. It was like I woke up and they were like, oh, you're really fucking sick. Like, you can't go to school today. And I just remember being in bed watching this, and I knew watching it that Halle Berry won the Oscar, but it didn't take away, even being 10 years old, watching that happen, like, fucking, like, nuked me in a weird way. Even as a 10-year-old, where I was just like, wait, this really didn't happen? like this hasn't happened yet? And I didn't see the movie until 7 or 8 years later. Maybe 6 or 7 years later. I saw it in high school, and I really, really liked it. And I hadn't seen it since. And I'm kind of in agreement with... Not kind of. I am in agreement with Kevin and Bryden in that I think that Marc Forster's broad melodramatic strokes are at war with the more quiet, intimate strokes. Like the scene where he's just like, is this music too loud for you? Like, that's a nice scene, like that's really nice, or even that stuff. But I do agree with Kevin in that, and it kind of makes me think about 3 Billboards, even though it was a film about racism, and even though the dynamic between Sam Rockwell and Frances McDormand is they're both white. Here it's different, but I kept thinking about how, like, I agree with Kevin that Billy Bob Thornton has so much more room for introspection, for more character brevity, that he's allowed to be a fully living, breathing character. Halle Berry's character, I agree, completely trapped by the screenplay, and that one bad thing happens to her again and again and again. I'm not going to criticize her performance or even... I can criticize the screenplay for being like, give this woman a break, please, because obviously all of that would be her life. But Billy Bob Thornton buying a gas station, it's like, why? Like, why are you doing this? Like, why? I feel like the film isn't saying it's trying to... I don't think the film is trying to equate these two people with their loss of children. I think it's trying to say they just ended up together, and but that doesn't mean that like Halle Berry's character, as contrived as the screenplay is against her, Of course that would be her entire fucking life. How can she breathe during a moment of this? I don't like that the screenplay puts her there, but that's understandable that she would be only thinking about these things. Billy Bob Thornton's character is just like, what personality does this person have other than his dad was like this and then he was like this, which we then saw in Mr. Death. But that's also, and I'm not saying this stuff doesn't happen to real people, but we don't, I feel like the film is almost naive in how it's trying to be like, don't they deserve happiness? And it's like, well, you trapped Halle Berry in this situation. Like, what, as Kevin and Bryden and you all have said, and you too, Laron, like, what else is she gonna do? Whereas Billy Bob Thornton, I mean, he has all the white fucking privilege in the world to do whatever the fuck he wants. So it's like, I don't like that. It feels like it's trying to it reaches for things that I think are fascinating and worth exploring and are ambiguous in a way that I think the ending's simultaneously the most interesting and fascinating point of the movie, but also the most problematic, like you said, Laron. Like, it's not leaving you with any answers, but is it like it's the first time it leaves you in Halle Berry's perspective, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
But is it but the screenplay's just fucking, it's built it up to where else can she go? You know?
Yeah, and the way I interpret it is like, on the one end, if the rest of the movie wasn't contrived, like you said, the certain, or at least the situations, some of the situations weren't as contrived as they are, then that's why in contrast the ending feels the most interesting, because like you said, like, we're sitting with ambiguity. They're not giving us the answers that we want and the reaction that we expect from it, and I admire that. But on the other end, I'm like, so you're telling me the only aspect of this, everything else is contrived? You might as well just went for it at this point and just given her a moment to release. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I felt like everything, every other scenario you put them in, you know, kind of goes by the book, you know. So it's like, in the one moment where it actually would benefit her, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
to actually say something or stand up for herself or to confront somebody about something that they've been sitting on, or that they've been privy to this entire time. I mean, I felt like her character was owed that at that point.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, and so
yeah, totally. It never feels like Billy Bob is like wrestling of when he's going to tell her, or that he knows.
No.
Because before the sex scene is when she shows him the drawings, and that's where he gets it, and he never feels conflicted or anything like that.
He throws up the next morning, and you see in the background of the mirror the picture,
right.
And then he says that didn't have anything to do with you, and that's basically it. Yeah,
which is a great thing to say. Yeah.
It also feels at odds with her performance, because it's like, you need to be big, capital B, big, in half of these scenes, but then the scenes in which you're required to be quieter, which require your best non-verbal acting, is like, but the character deserves more there.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like, that's the frustration I feel, the conundrum at this movie. Like, she deserves to have a moment, and yet she's acting her ass off just with body language, but that's not what her character deserves at this scene.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's frustrating. Yeah.
And it makes it so easy for Billy Bob, because at the end it's like, what did he really have to give up? You know what I mean?
Nothing.
He got everything he wanted. I mean, his son killed himself, and obviously he's torn up about that. But my thing is that, but what did he have to give up? What did he have to? All he got.
I mean, even the son stuff, like, and I don't even know if this is intentional, but like, Heath Ledger has agency of his own body, and when he kills himself, the child getting hit by the truck, or by a car. I know that they do make a point where they're like, he's a black kid. Who's really going to find out who did a hit and run on a black kid? But it feels much more cruel to equate these two. One's a child, one's not. But Heath Ledger has much more agency.
Yeah, he chose it. He chose. He didn't want to be there.
Yeah, whereas the kid just gets berated for being overweight and then abused by Halle Berry, and then he gets hit by a car simply so Billy Bob Thornton, I know we're getting into the plot here, but simply so Billy Bob Thornton happens to be there in a small town. And for the record, I'm a very privileged person who lives on the Northeast coast. I have not been to the South that much, but it still feels like the screenplay is kind of written by someone who hasn't been to the South that much. I don't know. Like, is that true? Like, I don't know.
I think they wrote it. They were like it. I think it takes place. It takes place in Georgia. I think they were in Georgia writing it. I think that's where they. But yeah, I can totally get that. And also on the commentary, I told Bryden and Charlie this, but there was an alternative ending because apparently this was written in like '96. And then it went through, like I said, all the different phases and whatnot, and they would rewritten it begrudgingly and whatnot. But Forster went back to the original script, apparently, but apparently one of the alternative endings was she finds out he's there on the porch, and then she shoots him through the screen door, and then leaves, and then he calls the police and says, I accidentally shot myself to get her off the hook. But that also wouldn't work because then her story is just, it's like, yeah, sure, she finally is able to take something from everything that's happening to her, but then she still has nothing at the end.
That's like Life of David Gale bullshit. Like, I don't know if any of you saw that movie, but like, it's just, I don't think, it's that thing where the movie's not saying we're equating these two people, but at the same time it's equating their, it's trying to say, don't they deserve this? Or don't they deserve this type of piece? And yeah, I completely agree. Like, Billy Bob Thornton, like, he has the world handed to him on a platter. It's not the same thing as Halle Berry, you know? Like,
yeah, when he gets fed up with his dad, he's like, okay, fine, I'll just put him in a home. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
He just gets rid of it.
Kicks
like, it's
ass.
like everything. But again, it's like, but he has control over all these bad situations. You know what I mean? Like, and so he sees her, and like I said, I mean, don't get me wrong, she's Halle Berry. I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, that turned anybody not racist. but
the movie has taught me anything, it's that.
But that's basically what it's saying, right? I mean, because it's like, okay, so you see this.
You would stop being racist for her. You would hack computers for her. You would be 007 for her. Yeah.
I wish there was. I think what would have made it, the blow of that, or like the contrivance of that, like a little less obvious or glaring, would have been like if we had gotten a little bit more, like maybe like in the earlier scenes. I know they do that from a screenwriter standpoint to kind of insulate us from the fact that these people actually have been crossing paths for all this time, right? But I think it would have made it more impactful if we had saw him have some interest in her early on, whenever the whole Sean Combs thing was, like, even just subtly, like, just to show that, like, he didn't just happen upon her and decide I love you. Like, he could have been having this longing for her a long time ago, and he finally acted on it when he had the opportunity, when they crossed paths. Still would have been contrived, but at least then it wouldn't feel so rushed. You know what I mean? Because, yeah.
Yeah, the rush, it's like, yes, people like this, they might exist, and maybe they overcome, you know, these hardships, some of whether it's like stuff that's happened to them or stuff that's within them, like, you know, deeply ingrained prejudices and everything. But it does not happen this quickly, I imagine. Like, like them getting together, like after they've had maybe 2 conversations. It is a lot it's a lot to ask from the audience, and I understand people not taking it in. It's sorry, Charlie, go ahead, please.
No, you please you.
Yeah, because there are a few things I do want to respond to. It's like, what does he get? Yes, he gets out from under his dad's thumb, which, like, and I will say, the movie, I mean, it's a problem of perspective, but I do feel like the movie is, some of the understatement with some of the Billy Bob Thornton, Peter Boyle scenes is actually good. Like it's one scene I think of in particular where Peter Boyle like grabs Billy Bob Thornton's arm and says like, we've got each other now. And he holds the grip on his arm for just a little too long. And you get just like this whole implied history of abuse that exists in this family that's really well done. But then you do have these like clashing sort of tones of that kind of understatement, and then there's just like grotesque dialogue where it's like Peter Boyle saying, "I got more pussy after my wife killed herself than what I did when she was living as my wife." I'm just like, stop! What the hell? What the hell is happening?
Yeah.
Like it's so much to take. It's so grotesque.
The Peter Boyle character, I'm not saying
it's
people
embarrassing.
like that don't exist.
Oh, 1000%.
Because they clearly do. It's just that whenever he opens his mouth, it's meant to affect another character. You know what I mean? Like, it's only meant to steer Billy Bob Thornton in the opposite direction. And it only feels like it just plain out like you don't want to be like racism is more complex than this. I feel like microaggressions don't really exist in this movie, I guess, is what I felt. Like it's just flat out like nasty, which that exists, of course, but the movie doesn't trust anybody as a viewer to
get
believe to get it exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and I also find this whole retirement home scene like that's like supposed to be that's like a victory for the Thornton character, but it's him like getting out from like this figure who's been influencing how he acts, but it reads like bullshit to me because there's like the telling shot I think of the black caretakers who pick up Peter Boyle, who looks absolutely terrified that like he's interacting with this group of people, and it's like, so Thornton's doing that knowingly, and it feels like that's like that points to like a falseness in his redemption arc that like I don't think he's actually overcome his prejudices because he's playing on those same beliefs and everything to get back at his father. It's like that feels like a racist gesture too. Feels like it does not really speak to the whole him overcoming it. And again, if the movie was I don't know that the ending aiming for ambiguity with Thornton and Barry ending up together, and I mean this like to tie into like the redemption arc. It's like maybe it would be interesting if it played to the point of like, are they going to be okay, and are they actually changed for the better? But I feel like the music like that plays in the scene, it starts out very ominous and like, ooh, what's going to happen in the thing when they meet in the kitchen, but then it turns to like the sort of gentle guitar noodling and everything as they look up the stars and share ice cream, and I'm like, all right, I feel like you're tipping your hand here that this is meant to be kind of and then they just say, I think we're going to be okay. Like it's like okay,
I will say the score is manipulative as fuck, but god damn it does work for me. I
like that kind of music, so
I hate that. Like I know it's pushing me in all the directions it wants to, but like it's and I think that's specifically to when I watched it as a teenager, is that score I found really lovely. I don't know if it works now, but I can't just scrub that from my memory.
Sure. And it's Ashton Spencer, the musicians, and it looks like they collaborated with Forster on a few other projects, including Stay. So it's like he must have liked them, I guess.
Well, I'm not talking about that movie, but
yes, Stay will make you want to stay in your seat until the credits roll.
Any movie that asks you that borderline begs you to be with it, not a bad sign from the title already.
Yeah, that's like one of those titles. It's just like you can't name it that because all the critics that hate it, they got a joke. What are you doing? The plot is like really long, and I feel like we've already talked around most of it. But let's just say closing thoughts. What do we got for Monsters Ball? Everybody's rushing out to see A Man Called Otto, right?
and that Wonder prequel that's coming out about Nazi Germany with Helen Mirren. Everyone's gonna see that too.
I know this is gonna be a weird closing thought, but I do think you should see it for Halle Berry's performance. Just because if you have issues with it, it is a historic win, and whether or not you react to the performance or not, I think it is certainly acting with a capital A. And there are even some scenes that, like, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but there is one scene, I'm sorry if it was talked about when I left the room, but there is a scene where she talks about how, right before the sex scene, how overweight her son is, and Billy Bob Thornton's like, I don't know what you want me to do here. And it almost feels like it broke character at one point, but Halle Berry is acting
him off the screen in that scene.
Acting him off the screen because Billy Bob Thornton's just like,
I don't know what to say.
Sounds like it was quite a character.
Whether or not you Yeah.
Boy, you sure like whiskey. And I was just like, sir, do you have anything else to say?
I actually like that little detail. I will say, I like that little detail that she only drinks nips. I like that detail that she's like, I have to go out, and then she just buys like $2 or $3 worth of nips and is just sipping. Like, I totally
little hotel bottles, yeah.
Yeah, I totally believe that. I do think it's worth seeing both for her win and also as a time capsule in a weird way.
Sure.
I think that it's not it's important. Like, whether or not it should be important or not, the Academy has declared it's important. You know what I mean? So I think that I do think it's a film that's not, it's not like Crash that won Best Picture, and I think Crash is just embarrassing at this point, where I do think this movie is like, it's very contradictory in many ways, and I can see people being like offended by a lot of it, but at the same time I do think it's worth your time to seek this out simply for Barry's performance and her historic win alone, because I was talking about this with Kevin and Bryden last night, Laron, but like, is it Halle Berry's fault that she's gotten such, like, I don't
No.
yeah, exactly, I don't think it is.
No, I think she gives it her all in everything she does, even the trash, even Catwoman. The movie's shit, but I don't think she's that bad, and I think the movie's bad.
There are so many actors that I love that are over the top, and I kind of love that she goes to 11. Like,
I watch all of her the shit like Kidnapped, The Call, all that stuff. I watch it because I think she's interesting to watch. Like, she's an like she doesn't know how to be. Well, this is the one time I think in Monsters Ball that she actually shows subtlety in any capacity. It's not the whole way through, but it's like there are quiet moments.
Yeah.
Sorry, in Monsters Ball.
That work in it, you know, so yeah. Mm-hmm. Even the most over the top moments of this movie, I'm like, I don't feel like it's anything less than sincere. If you know what I mean. Like, I feel like she's a very sincere performer who gets shit talked a lot, and it's not exactly fair. And I think that whether or not you like this performance or not, it's absolutely, I mean, it's historic at this point, so I feel like you should see it, even, and it's a complicated movie. I don't think that
it's bad. It's
myself at that.
No, there are movies that are like just bad, and then there are movies that, like you said, this is bad in interesting ways. You know what I mean? Like, the things that are bad about it are interesting, and they're worth talking about because we're doing it now. And so, I mean, I think, I mean, just to segue, I guess, into my closing thoughts about it, it's just, I have issues with it as my perspective has grown in 20 years. I mean, that's a lot of growth intellectually to have. You know, I think I'm attached to it for the historic win, you know, in many ways. I don't think it's an outright bad film. I think it's just a movie a product of its time, if that makes sense. The conversations I'm having about it now, I wouldn't have had about it then, even if I was the same age as I am now. You know what I mean? Because it was a different. It like it said, it predates Crash, for example. You know what I mean? Like, we say Crash is terrible now, you know, but I think that year, you know what I mean? Like, it made sense to me that was the movie that was going to win.
For most people, there were plenty of people that disliked it, but I mean, it was hugely lauded.
It was hugely lauded. It was Roger Ebert's #1 movie that year.
Yep.
so it's interesting to trace that back. Obviously, now movies like Brokeback Mountain that should have won that year now, you know, has kind of, you know, obviously has more of a timely, you know, trajectory. Like, now people refer to that movie a lot more favorably than they probably even did then, you know. So so it's interesting, worth seeing, for any other reason, just to have a discourse about what the hell was going on in Hollywood and what the hell was going on in the world from a socio-political standpoint.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at KevBonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at JDoyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CTNash91. Once again, thank you for listening.